Our Russian delegation's visit to Tehran, undertaken on the direct instructions from the president, was to pay tribute to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, who was martyred in the American attacks. But naturally, during this visit, we also discussed the current state of affairs with Iran. I had a conversation with President Pezeshkian, to whom I also conveyed the condolences from the Russian president. We are bound with Iran by a special agreement, a strategic partnership agreement, and our relations are developing within these agreements. Overall, the general atmosphere in Tehran made a thoroughly favorable impression on me. The capital is thriving and developing, even though entire neighborhoods within Tehran have been destroyed in U.S. bombing raids. There was no valid reason for the American attack. In other words, this aggressive action by the U.S. was absolutely unprovoked. Iran posed no threat whatsoever to the United States. Moreover, it had been in negotiations with the American delegation and reaching certain agreements. Then, at that very moment, the order was given to launch strikes against Iran. This is a tragic fact which, in essence, speaks to the collapse of the international law system, resulting in the deaths of Iran's entire leadership, including the supreme leader. Large numbers of civilians and schoolchildren were killed. This, of course, does no honor to those who made such decisions. The trigger was Iran's nuclear program, which has long been discussed, but to be frank, no one has actually presented any evidence to anyone. It is all limited to some general discussions about how to deal with Iran's nuclear materials. Although the Russian Federation did have proposals on this matter, in fact, our president put them forward, which would have resolved the issue peacefully. Iran has come through this most grueling ordeal with honor. I said not long ago that, rather than actual nuclear weapons, Iran has discovered another weapon that is no less potent than a nuclear one, namely the Strait of Hormuz, which has a complex international status linked both to Iran on one side and Oman on the other, and to the way in which passage through the strait is managed. But by blocking traffic, Iran has certainly demonstrated its power, and now discussions are taking place and agreements are being reached on how this strait will function in future. I believe that Iran has in its arsenal not only this nuclear weapon, but also a thermonuclear weapon, namely the Bab al-Mandab Strait, which could be used to block all oil and other shipments should military conflicts arise. Negotiations are always better than no negotiations at all. Everyone understands that, however, they must lead to some sort of outcome. Currently, the negotiations between the United States and Iran have concluded with signing a memorandum of understanding. The cost of this is clear. This document itself does not carry any legal obligations, but it does do one thing. It lays the groundwork for further negotiations. There are now documents in place setting a deadline for reaching some final agreements. To be frank, I think this process will be extremely complex. Reaching agreement on a number of issues, including, for example, allocating funds for Iran's reconstruction, will be extremely difficult. With regard to lifting sanctions on Iran, as I understand it, not everyone in the United States is keen to do so or to take a decision on lifting sanctions. I can only wish these negotiations every success, but it is quite possible that these negotiations could take a different turn. We could discuss creating some agreement or a forum where states subject to sanctions could develop strategies for countering them, and perhaps even impose counter-sanctions. This applies to both Russia and Iran. China has now been subjected to sanctions as well, And there are other countries against which the United States and the European Union have imposed sanctions. But I would emphasize once again that this is quite a straightforward matter. Such restrictions are unlawful. Therefore, they must be resisted.